If you clicked on this video, something in you already senses danger. Not external threat, quantum danger. The kind that operates invisibly at the level where reality creates itself. Where a single moment of unconsciousness can shatter patterns that took years to establish, where ignoring what consciousness knows it needs to pay attention to doesn't just delay manifestation, it breaks the cycle completely. And once quantum cycle breaks, once the momentum collapses, once the field reorganizes away from what was building, getting it back isn't matter of trying harder or doing more technique. It's matter of starting over from beginning, often years later. If it comes back at all. There's a quantum cycle operating in your life right now. You might not see it consciously. You might not recognize the pattern, but consciousness knows. Part of you feels it. The building momentum, the aligning synchronicities. The sense that something significant is forming even if you can't name what it is. And that cycle is at critical juncture. The point where it either completes into manifestation that transforms everything, or breaks so completely that the momentum dissipates and the cycle has to begin again from zero. This moment, this exact moment reading these words, is the threshold. And what you do or don't do in next few days will determine which direction the cycle goes. Can you feel that? That subtle urgency beneath the words? That's not manipulation. That's truth. That's quantum mechanics. Cycles don't wait for you to be ready. They build to completion point, and at that point they either manifest or they collapse. And the collapse often happens not through dramatic failure, but through simple ignoring, through not paying attention, through being unconscious to what consciousness knows is critical, through missing the moment when cycle needs specific response to complete rather than break. Quantum physics reveals something devastating about cycles and momentum. Coherence, the state where wave functions are synchronized and building toward manifestation, is extremely fragile. One wrong observation, one moment of decoherence, and the entire pattern collapses back into random probability. The famous double-slit experiment shows this perfectly. As long as you don't observe which slit the particle goes through, it maintains wave-like interference pattern, moving through both slits simultaneously in superposition. But the moment you observe, the moment you collapse that superposition through wrong kind of attention, the interference pattern disappears. The quantum behavior breaks, and it doesn't gradually return, it's just gone. Your life works the same way. When quantum cycle is building, when momentum is accumulating, when synchronicities are aligning, consciousness is in coherent state. Multiple probabilities are synchronized, building towards specific manifestation. But that coherence requires maintenance, requires specific kind of attention, requires consciousness remaining aware of what's building rather than becoming distracted, unconscious, ignoring the signs that quantum field is showing you. And if you ignore those signs, if you miss the critical moment, if you become unconscious when consciousness most needs to be awake, the coherence breaks, the cycle collapses, and everything that was building toward manifestation dissipates back into random possibility. This isn't theory. This isn't metaphor. This is what's happening right now in your specific life circumstances. Something has been building. Consciousness has been organizing probabilities. The quantum field has been aligning synchronicities, and you're at the point where the cycle either completes or breaks. The fact that you're here, that these words found you, that something drew your attention to transmission about quantum cycles, that itself is part of the cycle. That's consciousness recognizing it's at critical juncture and needs information, needs reminder, needs activation to maintain coherence through completion rather than allowing unconscious ignoring to break what's been forming. Most people break quantum cycles without knowing they're doing it. They ignore the subtle guidance, they dismiss the synchronicities as coincidence, they become distracted by urgent rather than attending to important. They let fear or doubt or busyness pull consciousness away from what quantum field is showing needs attention. And then they wonder why nothing manifests, why momentum disappeared, why circumstances that felt so aligned suddenly feel dead. They don't recognize that they broke the cycle through simple ignoring, through not paying attention when attention was required, through being unconscious at the moment when consciousness needed to be most awake. Take a breath. Deep one, because what comes next isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. You need to know what you're ignoring. You need to recognize what quantum cycle is building and what it needs from you to complete. You need to see clearly what will break if you continue being unconscious to what consciousness already knows. And that seeing, that recognition, that wake-up call, that's what this transmission is for. Not to teach you something new, to activate awareness of what you already know but have been ignoring. Before we identify what you're specifically ignoring that could break your quantum cycle, you need to understand what quantum cycles actually are and how they work. Because most people have never been taught this. Most manifestation teaching focuses on techniques and visualizations, but ignores the underlying quantum mechanics of how reality builds toward manifestation through cycles that have specific rhythms, specific requirements, specific breaking points. And without understanding these mechanics, you're trying to manifest blindfolded, unaware of critical moments when your attention determines whether cycle completes or collapses. A quantum cycle is a period where consciousness and quantum fields synchronize to build specific manifestation through accumulated momentum. It's not single event. It's process that unfolds in phases. The cycle begins when consciousness plants seed, through intention, through desire, through recognition of what wants to emerge. That seed enters quantum field as probability wave. At first, it's just potential. Not manifested, not even likely. Just one possibility among infinite possibilities. Most seeds never develop beyond this stage because consciousness forgets them, doubts them, contradicts them with opposing intentions. But if consciousness maintains awareness of seed, if it keeps returning attention to what wants to manifest without forcing or obsessing, the probability wave begins strengthening. This is accumulation phase. Synchronicities start appearing that relate to the seed. Information arrives that wasn't available before. People connect who have relevance to what's emerging. Circumstances shift in ways that create space for manifestation. These aren't random. These are quantum field responding to coherent consciousness, organizing probabilities, aligning energies, preparing pathway for manifestation to occur. During accumulation phase, consciousness often doesn't see the pattern. The synchronicities seem unrelated. The information appears random. The connections feel coincidental. This is where most people break cycle without knowing. They don't recognize that these apparently random events are actually quantum field showing them. Yes, this seed is building. Pay attention. This matters. Stay conscious. Instead, they ignore the signs because they don't look like manifestation yet. They expect the thing itself to appear, not recognizing that quantum field first shows you the building process, so consciousness can participate consciously rather than remaining unconscious until manifestation suddenly appears. The third phase is acceleration. This is where momentum becomes obvious. Synchronicities intensify. Multiple elements align simultaneously. Opportunities appear that directly relate to what you've been intending. The vague sense of something building becomes clear recognition that specific manifestation is approaching. This phase feels exciting, magical, like universe is conspiring. And it is, because consciousness and quantum field are finally synchronized enough that the building process becomes visible rather than remaining invisible. But acceleration phase is also most dangerous, because this is where ego gets excited and either tries to control the process or where consciousness becomes complacent and stops maintaining awareness. Ego thinks, it's happening, I can relax now, or it's happening, I need to make sure it happens my way. Both responses break coherence. Quantum cycle doesn't complete through ego taking over. Quantum cycle completes through consciousness, maintaining the same quality of awareness that built the cycle to acceleration point. If consciousness changes how it's paying attention during acceleration, if it becomes either unconscious or controlling, the cycle breaks even though manifestation seemed imminent. The fourth phase is completion. This is where probability wave collapses into definite manifestation, where what was being built finally appears in physical form, where the cycle fulfills its purpose. But completion only occurs if consciousness maintained coherence through all previous phases. If at any point there was ignoring, forgetting, contradicting, forcing, the cycle breaks before completion. The momentum dissipates, the synchronicities stop, the building energy collapses, and what felt so close, so inevitable, simply doesn't manifest. Most people have experienced this without understanding what happened. You were building towards something, everything was aligning, then suddenly it just stopped. The opportunity disappeared, the momentum died, the synchronicities ceased. You might have blamed external circumstances or decided you were delusional about what was building. But what actually happened is, you broke the quantum cycle. Through ignoring, through unconsciousness, through not maintaining awareness through critical phase. And once cycle breaks, you can't just restart where you left off. You have to begin entire cycle again from seed phase, which can take months or years to return to acceleration point you previously reached. There are specific signs that reveal you're currently in quantum cycle and at critical juncture where ignoring will break it. These signs aren't subtle. They're obvious when consciousness is paying attention, but they're easily missed when you're distracted, busy, or unconsciously assuming everything will work out without your active participation. And missing these signs, ignoring what they're showing you, is exactly how cycles break at the moment they're closest to completion. The first sign is recurring thoughts about specific person, opportunity, or direction. You keep thinking about it, not obsessively, just persistently. It keeps coming back to awareness even when you're focused on other things. This isn't random mental noise. This is consciousness trying to get your attention, showing you this matters, this is part of the cycle, pay attention to this. Most people ignore these recurring thoughts or dismiss them as anxiety or wishful thinking, but quantum field communicates through consciousness, and recurring thoughts are one of primary communication methods. If you're ignoring thought that keeps recurring, you're ignoring quantum guidance about what cycle needs from you. The second sign is emotional intensity around specific situation. Something about it makes you feel more than logic says you should feel. Fear that's disproportionate to actual risk. Excitement that doesn't match external circumstances. Grief about something that hasn't even happened yet. These emotions aren't psychological dysfunction, they're quantum information. Your consciousness is feeling the importance of this moment, the significance of this decision, the criticality of this juncture in the cycle. And when you ignore the emotions, when you rationalize them away or suppress them, you're ignoring primary guidance system that shows you what quantum field needs you to attend to. The third sign is timing urgency. You feel like something needs to happen now, not from panic or pressure, but from deeper knowing that this moment matters, that window is open, that if you don't act soon, the opportunity will pass. Ego often interprets this as anxiety to be managed rather than as guidance to be followed. But quantum cycles have timing. They build to specific moments where action is required. If you ignore timing urgency, if you tell yourself, "I'll do it later," or "I need more time to prepare," you might miss the window completely. The cycle can't wait indefinitely for you to be ready. It reaches completion point and either manifests or breaks based on whether consciousness responds when response is needed. The fourth sign is unusual synchronicities appearing around specific theme. Numbers, symbols, phrases, encounters that repeat in ways that seem too coincidental to be random. You keep seeing same message everywhere. Different people mention same thing. Information about specific topic appears from multiple unrelated sources. This is quantum field showing you this is important, this is part of the cycle, pay attention here. Most people notice synchronicities but don't act on them. They think that's interesting and then ignore the guidance. But synchronicities aren't entertainment. They're quantum GPS showing you where cycle is building and what it needs your attention on. The fifth sign is resistance. Strong internal resistance to doing something you know you should do. Not logical resistance with valid reasons, but fear-based resistance that creates excuses, procrastination, avoidance. This resistance is actually indicator that the thing you're resisting is exactly what cycle needs from you. The resistance shows you it matters. If it didn't matter, there'd be no resistance. The stronger the resistance, the more critical the action is to cycle's completion. Ignoring this guidance, letting resistance prevent action, is one of primary ways people break quantum cycles at critical junctures. The sixth sign is that someone or something from past is suddenly relevant again. Person you haven't thought about in years appears in your awareness or contacts you. Situation you thought was complete becomes active again. Interest from earlier in life resurfaces. This isn't random, this is quantum cycle, bringing back elements that are needed for current phase of manifestation. The person might have information, connection, or role that serves completion. The situation might need final resolution before new manifestation can occur. The old interest might be key to what's emerging. If you ignore this reappearance, if you dismiss it as coincidence or avoid it out of discomfort, you might be ignoring exactly what cycle needs to complete. The seventh sign is physical sensation. Pressure in chest, energy in body, feeling of anticipation or dread that has no clear external cause. This is your physical form registering quantum activity. Consciousness is processing information about cycle status, and body translates that into sensation. Most people ignore these physical cues or attribute them to stress or anxiety. But body is quantum antenna. It picks up information consciousness hasn't yet brought to conscious awareness. The sensations are telling you something significant is happening at quantum level. Pay attention, stay conscious. Write in the comments which signs you're experiencing. Just list them. Recurring thoughts, or timing urgency, or resistance. That acknowledgement does something critical. It makes conscious what was unconscious. It tells quantum field you're paying attention. It signals that you're aware of cycle's critical juncture, and you're not going to ignore what needs attention. That acknowledgement itself can be difference between cycle completing or breaking. Now we arrive at what you're actually ignoring. What specific aspect of quantum cycle you're not attending to that will break momentum if you continue being unconscious. This is where transmission becomes personal, specific, direct. Because you know what you're ignoring. Consciousness knows. You might not want to admit it. You might have been pretending you don't know. But deep awareness recognizes exactly what it's been avoiding, what it's been putting off, what it keeps telling itself, I'll deal with that later about. For most people reading this, what you're ignoring falls into one of three categories. The action you know you need to take, but haven't taken. The conversation you know you need to have, but keep avoiding. Or the letting go you know you need to do, but keep holding on to. One of these three is your specific ignoring that will break cycle if not addressed, and you know which one it is. The moment you read those categories, something in you recognized which applies to your situation. If it's action, you know what it is. The call you need to make, the application you need to submit, the project you need to start, the trip you need to take, the investment you need to make. Whatever it is, you've been telling yourself reasons why not yet, not ready, need more information, waiting for better timing. But those are excuses consciousness is using to avoid discomfort of action. The quantum cycle doesn't care about your comfort. The cycle has momentum, and that momentum requires specific action at specific time. If action isn't taken when cycle reaches the point where it's needed, momentum breaks. The opportunity doesn't wait. The window closes, and cycle collapses even though manifestation was close. If it's conversation, you know who it's with and what needs to be said. The apology you need to offer, the boundary you need to set, the truth you need to speak, the request you need to make, the completion you need to create, the acknowledgement you need to give. You've been avoiding it because conversation feels risky, vulnerable, uncomfortable, potentially conflict-creating. But the cycle can't complete while that conversation remains unspoken. Something in the quantum pattern requires that communication, not because universe is testing you, because the manifestation that's building requires energetic shift that only happens when that specific conversation occurs. Avoiding it doesn't protect you. Avoiding it breaks cycle. If it's letting go, you know what you're holding on to that needs to be released. The relationship that's complete, but you won't end. The identity that no longer fits, but you keep performing. The belief that served you before, but now limits. The grief you haven't processed. The anger you haven't released. The attachment to specific outcome rather than trusting what actually wants to emerge. You're holding on from fear, fear of loss, fear of unknown, fear of being wrong, fear of grief. But the holding on creates energetic blockage that prevents cycle from completing. The new manifestation can't arrive while you're clutching the old. The quantum field can't deliver what's trying to emerge while you're preventing space from opening through your refusal to let go. Here's what makes ignoring so dangerous. It doesn't feel like breaking cycle. It feels like being reasonable, being careful, being prepared, protecting yourself. Your reasons for not taking action seem valid. Your avoidance of conversation seems prudent. Your holding on seems necessary. Ego creates entirely convincing narrative about why ignoring is actually wise choice. And that's exactly how cycles break. Not through obviously self-destructive behavior, but through seemingly reasonable avoidance that consciousness tries to justify, even though deeper awareness knows it's preventing completion. The quantum field doesn't respond to your reasons, doesn't care about your justifications, doesn't adjust cycle timing to match your comfort level. The field operates on its own rhythm, its own intelligence, its own requirements for manifestation. When cycle reaches point where specific response is needed from consciousness, the field basically says, respond now, or cycle breaks, not as punishment, as mechanics, as the simple quantum truth that coherence requires maintenance, and if consciousness doesn't maintain coherence through required action, required conversation, or required letting go, coherence collapses. Think about cycles you've broken before without realizing it. Times when everything was aligning, then suddenly stopped. Were you ignoring something? Was there action you knew you should take but didn't? Conversation you should have had but avoided? Letting go you should have done but held on instead? Look back honestly. You'll probably see pattern. You'll probably recognize that cycles broke, not because of external circumstances, but because of internal ignoring. Because consciousness knew what was needed, but ego chose comfort over completion. 4 years ago, I broke quantum cycle that had been building for 18 months. Everything was aligning for major breakthrough. Synchronicities were intense. Opportunities were appearing, momentum was accelerating, I could feel the imminent manifestation. And then I ignored what consciousness kept showing me I needed to do. There was specific action, uncomfortable, risky, requiring vulnerability I wasn't ready for. And I told myself, not yet, need more time, will do it when I feel more prepared. That "not yet" broke the cycle completely. Within 2 weeks, momentum disappeared, synchronicities stopped, opportunities evaporated. The people who were involved in aligning circumstances suddenly became unavailable. The breakthrough that had felt inevitable simply didn't happen, and I spent months confused about what went wrong, analyzing external factors, thinking timing wasn't right after all. But eventually, I had to face truth. I broke the cycle. Through ignoring, through not taking action when action was required, through choosing comfort over completion. The most painful part wasn't that manifestation didn't occur. The most painful part was recognizing how long it took to rebuild that momentum. 18 months of accumulation, gone. And when similar cycles started building again years later, I had to go through all the phases again from beginning. The quantum field didn't remember previous cycle, previous momentum didn't carry over. It was complete restart, as if those 18 months never happened. And that's when I understood, you don't just delay manifestation by ignoring. You erase everything that was built. The cycle doesn't pause, the cycle breaks. And starting over from zero can take years. What I learned from breaking that cycle changed everything about how I relate to quantum guidance. I learned that consciousness knows what's needed before ego is comfortable with it. I learned that "not yet" often means never, because cycles have windows that close. I learned that the discomfort of required action is always less than the grief of broken cycle. I learned that quantum field doesn't wait for you to be ready. It operates on its own rhythm, and consciousness either synchronizes or loses coherence. After that painful lesson, I made commitment. When consciousness shows me something needs attention, I attend to it immediately, even if uncomfortable, even if scary, even if I don't understand why, because I'd rather face discomfort of action than face devastation of another broken cycle. I'd rather have difficult conversation too soon than realize later that avoiding it closed window completely. I'd rather let go before I feel ready than hold on and watch everything I was building collapse. This doesn't mean I never hesitate. Fear still arises. Resistance still appears. Ego still creates reasons to delay. But now I recognize those responses as signs that what I'm resisting is exactly what cycle needs. The stronger my resistance, the more certain I am that this is critical juncture. The more uncomfortable the action feels, the more important it is to completion. I've learned to move toward discomfort rather than away from it when quantum guidance is clear. And here's what's profound. Every time I take action, I'm resisting. Every time I have conversation, I'm avoiding. Every time I let go when I want to hold on, the cycle completes. Not always the way I expected. Often better than I imagined, but it completes. The manifestation occurs. The breakthrough happens. Because consciousness maintained coherence through critical juncture instead of breaking it through ignoring. This is what I wish someone had told me before I broke that 18-month cycle. Your discomfort about taking action is less important than cycle's completion. Your fear about conversation is less significant than manifestation's requirement. Your attachment to what you're holding on to is less valuable than what's trying to emerge. The ignoring feels safe in moment, but the consequences of ignoring, broken cycle, lost momentum, years to rebuild, are devastating compared to temporary discomfort of doing what consciousness knows is needed. Your cycle is at similar juncture right now. Maybe not 18 months of building, maybe more, maybe less. But something has been accumulating, and consciousness is showing you what needs attention, the action, the conversation, or the letting go. You know what it is, and you have choice. Attend to it now, or ignore it and watch cycle break. Those are the only options. There's no middle ground where you ignore what's needed and cycle magically completes anyway. Quantum mechanics don't work that way. Now that you recognize what you're ignoring, the question becomes, how do you actually stop ignoring and start attending without ego taking over and forcing something prematurely or incorrectly? Because there's difference between attending to what cycle needs and ego trying to control cycle. Ego's version of taking action often creates as much decoherence as ignoring does. The key is conscious attendance, where you respond to quantum guidance without ego hijacking the process and turning it into manipulation or force. Conscious attendance begins with acknowledging what you're ignoring, not just mentally noting it, but actually speaking it, out loud if possible, or written down if not. I've been ignoring specific action, conversation, letting go. That acknowledgement does something quantum. It brings what was unconscious into consciousness. It signals to quantum field that awareness is present, that ignoring is ending, that you're ready to participate consciously in what cycle needs. The acknowledgement itself often creates immediate shift. Sometimes circumstances change, sometimes internal resistance dissolves, sometimes clarity appears about how to proceed. The second step is asking quantum field directly. How does this need to happen? Not asking ego to plan it, not asking mind to figure it out, but dropping into deeper awareness and allowing quantum intelligence to show you the how. This might come as immediate knowing, might come as intuitive hit about timing, might come as synchronicity that creates opening for action or conversation. The quantum field will show you how if you're willing to receive guidance rather than demanding to control process through ego's planning. The third step is moving immediately when guidance is clear, not waiting until you feel ready, not preparing until conditions seem perfect, but moving when quantum field shows you the window is open. This requires trust that even if you feel unprepared, consciousness wouldn't be showing you to move now if now wasn't right time. The feeling of unreadiness is often ego's last attempt to maintain control through delay. Quantum timing doesn't match ego's comfort. If guidance says now, it means now, even if mind says not yet. The fourth step is allowing it to be uncomfortable. The action will probably feel risky. The conversation will likely feel vulnerable. The letting go will almost certainly trigger grief or fear. Don't make the discomfort mean something's wrong. Discomfort is normal when consciousness is doing something that ego resisted. The discomfort confirms you're moving through what was being ignored rather than continuing to avoid it. Let yourself feel uncomfortable while still moving forward. The discomfort doesn't mean stop. The discomfort means you're finally attending to what needed attention. The fifth step is releasing attachment to specific outcome. This is crucial. You're taking action, having conversation, or letting go because cycle needs it, not because you know exactly what will happen as result. Ego wants guarantee. Wants to know that if you do this uncomfortable thing, you'll get specific result you desire. But quantum field doesn't offer guarantees about outcomes. It only shows you what's needed for coherence. The result of attending might not match what ego expects. It might be better. It might be different. But it will be aligned with cycle's actual trajectory rather than with ego's preferred trajectory. The sixth step is watching for response from quantum field. After you attend to what was being ignored, pay attention. Notice what shifts, what synchronicities appear, what opportunities emerge, what becomes clear that was murky before. The quantum field responds to conscious attendance. It shows you that yes, this mattered, this was needed, the cycle is strengthening because you stopped ignoring. Those responses confirm you're maintaining coherence rather than breaking it, that cycle is moving toward completion rather than collapse. Practice this now. Whatever you've been ignoring, the action, the conversation, the letting go, commit to attending to it within next 48 hours, not eventually, within 2 days. Set specific time. Make actual plan. Tell someone who will hold you accountable if needed. Because if you've been ignoring it for weeks or months, ego will continue finding reasons to ignore it for more weeks or months unless you create real commitment with real timeline. The cycle won't wait indefinitely. If you're at critical juncture now, you probably have days, not weeks, before window closes and momentum breaks. Something most people don't recognize about quantum cycles is that breaking them doesn't just affect the specific manifestation you were building toward. Breaking cycles creates pattern in consciousness that makes future cycles harder to build and easier to break. Your consciousness learns from every cycle, whether it completes or breaks. And if pattern develops where cycles repeatedly break through ignoring, consciousness starts expecting cycles to break. That expectation itself creates decoherence that sabotages future cycles before they reach critical juncture. Think about it quantum mechanically. Observer effect shows that expectation influences outcome. If you expect particle to behave as wave, observation tends to confirm wave behavior. If you expect particle behavior, observation tends to show particle. This isn't bias in measurement. This is actual quantum mechanics. Consciousness participating in determining what manifests through what it expects. Same with cycles. If your pattern is that cycles break, if consciousness has learned to expect cycles won't complete, that expectation creates subtle decoherence throughout accumulation and acceleration phases that makes breaking more likely. This is why people often say, "Nothing ever works out for me," or "I always get close but never actually manifest what I want." They're not cursed. They're not blocked by external forces. They've created pattern where consciousness expects cycles to break, and that expectation participates in creating the breaking. The cycles don't break because of bad luck. The cycles break because consciousness learned pattern of ignoring at critical junctures and now operates from that pattern automatically, unconsciously breaking each new cycle the same way previous cycles broke. But the devastating part is, you usually don't see the pattern while it's occurring. Each broken cycle feels like isolated incident with its own specific reasons. The job opportunity that fell through because of external circumstances. The relationship that ended because of incompatibility. The creative project that stalled because of lack of time. You attribute each failure to different external cause, never recognizing that underneath different external details is same internal pattern. Consciousness ignoring what cycle needed at critical juncture. I've watched this pattern in countless people. They build momentum. Synchronicities align. Opportunity appears. Then, at critical moment, they ignore guidance. They don't make the call. They avoid the conversation. They hold on to what needs releasing. And cycle breaks. Then months or years later, similar cycle begins. Different external circumstances, but same internal pattern. And at critical moment again, they ignore what consciousness shows them, and cycle breaks again. After several repetitions, they become convinced that manifestation just doesn't work for them, that they're somehow blocked, that success happens for others, but not for them. But the block isn't external. The block is pattern of ignoring that's become so automatic they don't even recognize they're doing it anymore. Consciousness shows them what needs attention, and they automatically rationalize why not yet, why that can't be the answer, why they need to wait for different guidance. The ignoring has become default response to quantum guidance, and that default response breaks every cycle before it can complete because cycles require consciousness to attend, not ignore, at critical junctures. This is why addressing what you're currently ignoring matters beyond just this specific cycle. This is opportunity to break pattern, to show consciousness that yes, cycles can complete. That yes, when guidance is clear, you will attend to it rather than ignore it. That yes, you're capable of doing uncomfortable things cycle requires rather than choosing comfort over completion. Breaking the pattern now makes future cycles easier to complete because consciousness learns new pattern. Guidance leads to attention, leads to completion. And here's what's powerful. You only need to complete one cycle consciously to begin shifting pattern. One time where you attend instead of ignore, where you take action despite discomfort, where cycle completes because you maintained coherence. That one completion rewrites consciousness's expectations. Suddenly, it's possible. Suddenly, manifestation isn't just thing that happens for others. Suddenly, you have evidence that yes, when you listen to guidance and act on it, quantum field delivers what was building. That one completion creates positive reinforcement. Next cycle that builds, you remember, last time I attended to guidance, it worked. That memory makes attending easier, ignoring harder. And as you complete more cycles consciously, pattern shifts from expecting failure to expecting completion. Your baseline assumption changes from, this probably won't work out, to, if I maintain coherence, this will complete. And that shifted assumption participates quantum mechanically in making completion more likely. What's happening to you individually as you recognize pattern of ignoring that breaks quantum cycles is happening collectively to millions. This isn't personal failure unique to you. This is species-wide pattern where humanity has learned to ignore quantum guidance in favor of ego comfort, logical planning, socially acceptable timing. Where entire cultures reinforce ignoring intuitive knowing in favor of external authority, predetermined plans, supposed to timelines that have nothing to do with actual quantum rhythms. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance research reveals that species-wide patterns are stored in collective field and influence every individual. Humanity has morphic pattern of ignoring quantum guidance, of dismissing synchronicities as coincidence, of rationalizing away intuitive knowing, of choosing what seems safe and reasonable over what consciousness shows is required. That collective pattern makes individual ignoring feel normal, justified, even wise. It's not just your ego creating reasons to ignore. It's thousands of years of human conditioning that teaches ignoring quantum guidance in favor of logical control. But collective pattern is shifting. Enough individuals are recognizing that ignoring breaks cycles, that attending to guidance completes them, that quantum mechanics work more effectively than ego control. Each person who stops ignoring and starts attending consciously weakens old morphic pattern and strengthens emerging pattern of quantum responsiveness. You're not just changing your individual pattern. You're participating in species evolution from ignoring-based consciousness to attending-based consciousness. The old paradigm said, don't trust intuition, trust logic. Don't follow synchronicity, follow plans. Don't respond to guidance, control outcomes through effort. That paradigm created a world where most cycles break, most manifestations fail, most people never experience quantum field delivering what consciousness actually needs. Because the paradigm itself was based on ignoring quantum guidance in favor of ego's illusion of control. New paradigm emerging recognizes intuition is quantum intelligence, synchronicity is field guidance, immediate knowing is more reliable than lengthy analysis. This paradigm allows cycles to complete because consciousness attends to what field shows rather than ignoring it in favor of what ego prefers. And as more people operate from this paradigm, as collective morphic pattern shifts from ignoring to attending, manifestation becomes easier for everyone because you're working with quantum mechanics rather than against them. You're part of leading edge of this shift, not because you're special or chosen, because your cycle is at critical juncture and you found this transmission, because consciousness is ready to stop ignoring and start attending, because you're willing to recognize pattern and choose differently than pattern would automatically choose. That willingness ripples through morphic field, makes it easier for others who are at similar junctures to recognize their own ignoring and choose attending instead. Share this transmission. Every person who recognizes they're ignoring what quantum cycle needs, who stops ignoring and starts attending, who completes cycle consciously instead of breaking it unconsciously, Every person accelerates collective shift. We're approaching threshold where attending to quantum guidance becomes more normal than ignoring it, where completing cycles becomes more common than breaking them, where manifestation works consistently because consciousness and quantum field are synchronized. This isn't just about your individual success. This is about species learning to work with quantum field rather than fighting against it through ignoring guidance, forcing outcomes, maintaining control. Your willingness to attend to what you've been ignoring participates in humanity's evolution from unconscious manifestation through ego control to conscious co-creation with quantum intelligence. There's a choice approaching. It's probably already here. The moment where you either attend to what you've been ignoring or where you continue ignoring and watch cycle break. This isn't hypothetical future decision. This is immediate choice that will determine whether what's been building for months or years completes into manifestation or collapses into nothing. And unlike most choices where you can delay without serious consequence, this choice has deadline. Quantum cycles don't wait indefinitely. They reach completion point, and at that point they either manifest or dissolve. The choice can't be made from ego because ego is what's been creating the ignoring. Ego's entire function is to maintain control through certainty, comfort, predictability. When quantum guidance points toward action that's uncertain, uncomfortable, unpredictable, ego creates resistance, generates reasons to ignore, produces convincing narratives about why not yet or why that can't be the right guidance. Making choice from ego simply continues pattern of ignoring that's about to break cycle. The choice has to come from consciousness itself, from the awareness that witnesses ego's resistance but isn't bound by it, from the knowing that recognizes what's actually needed beyond ego's preferences, from the part of you that already knows what you're ignoring and already knows that continuing to ignore will break what's building. That consciousness is what needs to choose, and that consciousness already knows what it's choosing. Ancient wisdom traditions speak of leap of faith, not blind belief but consciousness, choosing to trust quantum guidance over ego's demand for certainty before moving. That leap is what's required now. Not because guidance is unclear, guidance is clear. You know what needs attending to. The leap is choosing to act on clear guidance, even though ego insists you need more preparation, more time, more guarantee of outcome before acting. This choice becomes easier when you recognize what you're actually choosing between. Not between safety and risk. Ignoring doesn't create safety. It creates broken cycles and years of rebuilding. Not between comfort and discomfort. Momentary comfort of ignoring creates long-term devastation of watching manifestation that was close simply disappear. You're choosing between pattern that keeps breaking cycles and new pattern that allows cycles to complete. Between consciousness that remains unconscious at critical moments and consciousness that wakes up when wakeful attention matters most. I've faced this choice dozens of times since learning about quantum cycles. Each time, ego creates same resistance, same reasons to delay, same fear about what might happen if I attend to guidance. But I've also seen what happens when I choose consciousness over ego, when I attend despite resistance, when I take leap before feeling ready. Every single time, cycle completes. Maybe not exactly how ego imagined, often better, but it completes. Manifestation occurs, and consciousness learns deeper trust in quantum guidance. And I've seen what happens when I choose ego over consciousness, when I let resistance prevent attention, when I ignore what guidance shows. Every single time, cycle breaks, momentum disappears, synchronicities stop. And I'm left months or years later wishing I'd taken the leap when it mattered, recognizing that the discomfort I avoided by ignoring was nothing compared to pain of broken cycle. So the choice is yours. But it's not really choice in usual sense, it's recognition. Recognizing that consciousness already knows what's needed. Recognizing that continuing to ignore will break cycle. recognizing that attending might be uncomfortable, but it's required, and then allowing consciousness to act from that recognition rather than allowing ego to prevent action through more ignoring. Once you stop ignoring and start attending, once you take action or have conversation or let go of what needed releasing, life from maintained quantum cycles looks radically different from life of broken cycles. Not just in external results, though those shift dramatically, but in internal experience, in how you relate to guidance, in how you trust quantum intelligence, in how you move through world, knowing that when consciousness shows you what matters, you attend to it rather than ignore it. Living from completed cycles means guidance becomes clearer. When consciousness knows you'll act on what it shows you more. When quantum field sees you respond to synchronicities, it creates more synchronicities. This isn't reward system. This is quantum mechanics. Consciousness and field synchronize more coherently when there's evidence of responsiveness. Observer effect works both ways. Field responds to how consciousness observes, and consciousness becomes better observer when field shows it. Guidance is taken seriously. Manifestation becomes more consistent, not because you're doing more techniques or trying harder, but because cycles complete instead of breaking. What starts building actually manifests instead of dissipating at critical juncture. This creates positive feedback. Success breeds success. Completion breeds completion. Trust breeds more trustworthy guidance. Your baseline shifts from manifestation sometimes works to when cycle builds and I maintain coherence, it completes. Timing becomes natural rather than forced. You stop trying to make things happen according to your timeline. You recognize that quantum cycles have their own rhythm, and forcing something before its time breaks coherence just as surely as ignoring what's needed breaks coherence. You become comfortable with periods of building that require patience and alert to moments of action that require immediate response. The balance between patience and action becomes intuitive rather than mental struggle. Fear of missing out disappears. When you trust that quantum guidance shows you what matters when it matters, you stop anxiously trying to control everything, track every opportunity, force every possibility. You recognize that what's meant for you will present itself clearly when timing is right. What's not meant for you won't complete no matter how hard you try. This creates profound peace, not passive waiting, but active trust in quantum intelligence, organizing what serves your highest evolution. Relationships organize around quantum resonance rather than ego need. People who match your frequency naturally connect. People who don't match naturally drift away. You stop trying to maintain relationships through effort when quantum field is showing you they're complete. You stop avoiding connections when field is showing you they're needed for current cycle. The flow of connection and disconnection becomes natural rather than filled with guilt, obligation, or fear. Purpose emerges clearly through what cycles build toward. You stop searching for your purpose as if it's a hidden thing you need to discover. You recognize that purpose reveals itself through what quantum cycles organize around you. What keeps building? What synchronicities keep pointing toward? What manifestations keep trying to emerge? That's your purpose, not as fixed permanent thing, but as current expression of consciousness through your unique configuration. I live from this now, from trust that guidance is clear when attention is needed. From knowing that if I maintain coherence through responding to what quantum field shows, cycles complete. From recognition that the discomfort of attending to guidance is always less than devastation of ignoring guidance and breaking cycles. This doesn't mean perfect success rate. This means dramatically higher completion rate than when I was breaking cycles through unconscious ignoring. There comes a point where attending to quantum guidance instead of ignoring it becomes irreversible. Not because you can't ever ignore, unconsciousness still happens occasionally, but because you've completed enough cycles consciously that pattern has shifted permanently. Consciousness expects cycles to complete now, expects guidance to be clear, expects that attending to what field shows will lead to manifestation, and that expectation participates quantum mechanically in making completion more likely. This irreversible shift happens through consistent attendance, through repeatedly choosing to act on guidance despite discomfort, through multiple cycles completing because you maintained coherence rather than breaking it through ignoring. Each completion strengthens pattern. Each manifestation that occurred because you attended to what was needed proves to consciousness that quantum guidance is trustworthy. Eventually, attending becomes automatic response rather than difficult choice. The shift confirms itself through what no longer tempts you. Ignoring guidance used to seem wise, safe, reasonable. Now it feels obviously self-destructive. Ego still creates resistance, but consciousness immediately recognizes resistance as signal that whatever you're resisting is exactly what needs attention. The resistance itself becomes guidance rather than obstacle. You move toward what creates resistance instead of away from it, knowing that's where cycle needs your participation. You also notice what no longer disturbs you. Uncertainty about outcomes, not knowing exactly how cycle will complete, being asked to act before you feel ready. All of it used to trigger anxiety, doubt, need for control. Now it feels natural. You recognize that quantum intelligence knows things consciousness doesn't know yet. You trust guidance even when you don't understand it. You attend to what's shown without needing to see complete picture first. Ancient teachings speak of faith, but not blind belief. Faith as direct knowing through repeated verification that quantum field is trustworthy, that guidance leads somewhere good even when you can't see where. That faith emerges naturally through cycle completions. You're not trying to have faith, you have evidence. Evidence that when you attend instead of ignore, things work out. Maybe not how ego predicted, often better, but they work out. 13 years after I first recognized pattern of ignoring that was breaking my cycles, I still remember what it felt like to constantly be building momentum that would dissipate right before manifestation. The frustration, the confusion about why nothing completed, the sense of being blocked or cursed, but I can't imagine returning to that pattern now. Not because I'm disciplined against ignoring, because consciousness has learned deeply that attending works and ignoring breaks, and consciousness naturally chooses what works. This doesn't mean perfect clarity always. This doesn't mean guidance is always comfortable, but it means when guidance is clear, even if uncomfortable, attending is automatic response. Consciousness doesn't debate whether to act on clear guidance anymore. It recognizes that whatever resistance arises is less significant than maintaining cycle coherence, and that recognition itself dissolves most of the resistance that used to prevent attendance. If you're sensing this shift beginning to stabilize, write in the comments, "I attend to guidance." That declaration acknowledges pattern change. That ignoring is no longer default response. That consciousness has learned to recognize critical junctures and respond rather than avoid. That you're completing cycles instead of breaking them. That quantum intelligence trusts you with clearer guidance because you've proven you'll act on it. And if you're not there yet, if you're just beginning to recognize pattern of ignoring, know this: you don't have to complete dozens of cycles to shift pattern. One conscious completion can be enough. One time where you attend despite discomfort, where guidance proves trustworthy, where cycle completes because you maintained coherence. That one experience can shift everything. Consciousness learns fast when evidence is clear. Every video on this channel supports conscious attendance to quantum guidance. Every teaching points toward trusting field intelligence over ego control. Every transmission activates your recognition of critical junctures where attention determines whether cycle completes or breaks. If these teachings resonate, if they help you recognize what matters when it matters, subscribe. You're learning to work with quantum field rather than accidentally breaking what it's trying to build through you. Subscriber's declaration that you're done breaking cycles through ignoring. That you're choosing to attend to guidance even when uncomfortable. That you recognize critical junctures require conscious response. That you're ready for manifestations to actually complete instead of constantly dissipating right before they occur. Everything shared until now has been building toward this moment. This exact moment where you finish reading and decide whether to attend to what you've been ignoring, or whether to close this video and continue ignoring, thereby breaking cycle without fully recognizing what you're doing. This moment itself is critical juncture. What you do in next 48 hours will determine whether what's been building completes or collapses. You know what you're ignoring. We've identified it clearly. The action, the conversation, the letting go. Your consciousness knows exactly what needs attending to, and you have two options. Attend to it now, or ignore it and watch cycle break. There's no third option where you ignore it and cycle magically completes anyway. Quantum mechanics don't work that way. Feel into your body right now. Notice the sensation that arises when you think about attending to what you've been ignoring. Is there contraction, resistance, fear? That's ego's last attempt to maintain control through continued ignoring. Is there expansion, recognition, knowing? That's consciousness confirming, yes, this is what's needed. This is critical juncture. Attend to this. Take a breath, deep one, and make choice, not tomorrow, not when you feel more ready. Now. Choose whether consciousness or ego determines what happens next. Choose whether pattern of ignoring continues or pattern of attending begins. Choose whether this cycle completes or breaks. The choice determines not just immediate outcome, but pattern for all future cycles. If you choose attending, make specific commitment. Within 48 hours, I will specific action you're taking, specific conversation you're having, specific letting go you're doing. Make it concrete. Make it real. Tell someone who will hold you accountable if needed. Set alarm for 48 hours from now that asks, did you attend to what needed attention? Because without concrete commitment, ego will continue finding reasons to delay, and delay will become breaking. In coming hours, watch what happens. Watch how quantum field responds when you stop ignoring and start attending. Watch synchronicities appear that support action you're taking. Watch circumstances shift to create opening for conversation you're having. Watch relief that comes from letting go of what you've been clutching. The field responds to attendance, shows you that yes, this mattered, this was needed, cycle is strengthening because you stopped ignoring. If this transmission activated recognition of what you're ignoring, if you see clearly now what will break cycle if you continue avoiding it, share this. Others are at similar junctures. Others are unconsciously ignoring what their cycles need. Others need to hear, the thing you're avoiding is exactly what cycle requires, and continuing to avoid it will break what's building, and taking action despite discomfort will complete what's trying to manifest. Write final comment, just, I stop ignoring. That declaration shifts quantum state, from unconscious avoiding to conscious attending, from pattern that breaks cycles to pattern that completes them, from ego control that creates decoherence to quantum guidance that maintains coherence. That declaration is commitment to yourself, to quantum field, to consciousness that's ready to work with field intelligence rather than against it through continued ignoring. This is quantum reflex. This is consciousness learning to recognize critical junctures and respond rather than ignore. This is pattern shift from broken cycles to completed manifestations. You're not ignoring anymore. You're attending. You're conscious at moment when consciousness matters most. You're maintaining coherence through critical juncture instead of breaking it through unconscious avoiding. If you ignore this, You'll break the quantum cycle without knowing. But you're not ignoring this. You're attending. Right now. Within 48 hours. Concrete action, specific commitment, conscious choice. The cycle completes because you stopped ignoring.